Hello guys, and welcome back to another Spore creation video. And for today's creation, we're going to be making Grookey, one of the new Pokemon Sword and Shield starters. Now, I will admit, it's probably my second or third time making this now. The first time just didn't really work out. And the second time, I tried making the creature small because, you know, after all, the starter Pokemons are very, very small. So I tried to make a much smaller creation, and what ended up happening was that where the creatures are the Pokemon creatures are very, what's the word? Their proportions are very, very exaggerated, very cartoonish. And when trying to translate that into Spore, it's very, very hit or miss. And in the case of Grookey here, it was an extraordinarily huge miss. When I tried making the creation nice and small to reflect, you know, again, a small creature, it was just going all sorts of wrong. The simple mechanics of Spore were not really in my favour. Things kept on just looking really, you know, spaced out, really clunky. It was just off. So I'm going to try again now with a much larger creature, but still try to capture the general same proportions. And it is very, very tricky anyway, because when it comes to these Pokemon, like I said, very, very exaggerated forms, they are really hard to translate into Spore. Due to the fact that, as simple as it is, you know, with this Pokemon here, it's got a very large head and very small body, it just really messes with my general rhythm, you know, when making creations. I'm very used to things being of a particular proportion. Now, when I make things that are pretty flipped over, it's really hard to, like, kind of make it the exact same as that and not to make the body proportionately larger and, you know, have things make more sense. It's a bit of a tricky thing, really. Probably didn't explain it as well as I could have done, but, you know, just trust me when I say it. It's kind of tricky, actually. So right now I'm just trying to get, you know, the body to be about the right curvature, the right size, have a bit of a crook in the neck, which I am struggling to do. So I think about like that, maybe about acceptable for now. As I add more parts on, it will become clearer later on what more I need to add on. But I think this is okay for now. Now then, for the legs. The legs, like I said, but I tried to make the creature a lot smaller. The legs were a nightmare to do because of the simple fact that when you have, you know, when you try to make the limbs really condensed, you can only move them so far to the body. As you can see here, it just doesn't want to get any closer to the body, which is a bit tricky when the creature's kind of like folded or hunched over. So I'm really hoping I do a bit of a better job this time round. Let's make that a bit smaller as well. There we go then. Do excuse the lovely butt there. You know, it's just one of those things of creations. You have like weird little things like that midway production, and there's always someone who's gonna timestamp it. No doubt it'll happen again now. Right, for the feet. Now the feet are really, really tiny, so it's kind of hard to see what exactly they're meant to be. I think just using a simple paw here will probably be enough. Normally I try to get a bit creative with the feet, you know, have a bit of a couple of parts stacked on, make everything a bit more customized and such. I don't think it's really required for this one. I think just a little paws will be more than enough. The legs are a bit larger than I'd like them to be. But again, like I said, as we get further on the creation, hopefully things will just kind of make, you know, kind of stand out a bit more, make a bit more sense as we go on. As I said, the whole proportions thing really does mess with my head, like, big time. But I think that's acceptable. And let's get the arms here as well. Now, the elbows, of course, need to be bent backwards, which is a thing I was surprisingly struggling on earlier, my first attempt. Or second attempt, more like. Because I cannot have them be too close to the body. But now, as you can see, because the joint is larger, it won't let me have it any higher up without doing this silly thing here. If there's one new thing I could have in terms of Spore modding, is to have the body not just completely, you know, not completely, what's the word, reject the positioning of the limbs. I wish the limbs could be much, much closer to the body. That'd be lovely. Especially for creations like this. But I think, given, you know, the restrictions that we're currently having, I think having the creation about like that is rather acceptable. Now, for the big obnoxious shoulders there, that is completely fine. What we can do for that is get the good old smoother parts there. Add the hands on so I can control it, like so. And then, actually, I may have done that a little bit wrong. Let's go ahead and there we go. I am lacking one of my mods, and I'm having to do things a little bit differently than I normally would, so I'm a little bit out of rhythm. Hopefully it won't be too much of an issue for this, but just bear that in mind in case I keep on going backwards and, you know, redoing certain things. Right, I'm going to try and smooth that all together. Get a bit of an idea for the shoulders. If it will let me. Once again, I am having that issue where I just cannot move the hands any closer to the body. It's all being very jagged and very, very stubborn. I think, let me see, that's about right. I'd say having it just a little bit... In fact, actually no, if I move the entire thing just inward slightly. There we go, that made a big difference in the overall form. And then, about like that, yes, that is spot on, that is perfect. Again, for a creation. It's not perfect for the actual, you know, Grookey appearance, but again, for the Spore creation, this is about as close as we're going to get. So now that I've got the body in place, the head now doesn't seem quite as bad. If anything, the head does actually feel a little bit too small. Then again, when I add the ears on, that may... Yeah, okay, when I add the ears onto it, that's going to make, you know, help with the whole smaller feelings. I think overall, in terms of proportions, we may actually be about spot on, which is good. Next thing I want to do is the tails. I want to hide, I want to get rid of that damn butt. So let's get a tail in place then. Have that about there. And there. There we go. And then we'll have another smoother on the end of that to try and, you know, put things all into place. Now for the tail, it's got like a very nice little simple curly tail from what I can see. If I just add a bunch of limbs onto it, it's going to animate quite a bit, but that'll be fine though. As long as we can get the overall shape like that. Perfect. Make it all a little bit smaller, a little bit more condensed. Like so. And there. Or actually, if I remove that one entirely, I think I've added one too many. Have that one there just be a little bit bigger. Yep, I'd say that's about perfect. Well, saying that, it does still feel just a little bit too big. Okay. Make the entire thing just a little bit smaller, even further. Have it all be a little bit more proportional. Now that is definitely more like it. That looks a lot more accurate to the creation. To the creature. I keep on going backwards and forth with that, I'm sorry. Trying to remember the right term. Too many creations and creatures, creatures and creations. God damn it. Right. Now that... It's been a bit tricky to do because things are all a bit clunky and large, but hopefully I can go ahead and smooth the tail into the rest of the body. But it doesn't seem like... In fact, I can't move that below the... Oh, that's strange. Normally I can move these below the floor, but it won't let me anymore. Well, look, crud, that's definitely a bit of an issue. Okay then, so I'm going to... I may just have to ignore that bit there entirely, a bit all dents there, which is really, really annoying. Normally I can fix that. But if I can't move the smoother below the ground, then that's just an issue straight up. Right, okay, like I said, I have had to reinstall my Spore recently, so things aren't quite 100% as they were before. And there's a couple of little features here and there, as we've just discovered there, that I haven't quite encountered yet. Therefore, I've not fixed yet. But hey, what can you do? What can you do? Let's move on to the next feature, and that will be the little eye markings. The little raccoon mask it appears to have. Now for this, I'll be using nail downs for this piece here. That way I can, you know, retain a nice circular form. You know, as close to circular as I can get. Gonna make them float ever so slightly above as well. That way that the circles are a lot more defined. Such as, like that. But not close to each other because it does, after all, have this little triangular part. Well, actually, that doesn't seem right. There we go. So it does have this little triangular spike up there. Go ahead and take that out. No? Okay, what I may have to do then is... Oh, yep, like that. That is almost perfect. Another little bit like that, bring that out, and just kind of like fiddling around here, trying to get like the right sort of transition and the right sort of, you know, spiky bit. I think that about like that, it's pretty good enough. The little raccoon mask thing is, you know, just colours on the creature. They don't really come out in any way, so having it as flat as possible is ideal. I think about like that is pretty damn good. Now then, the colour of the mouth is the same colour as the arms and legs. So for that, I'm actually going to be using this piece here, the detail sphere, because the detail sphere will inherit the colours of the detail textures, which is what I'll be using to paint the arms and legs. So that way we get to make it all nice and consistent. And it's, you know, being a nice perfect sphere. Now the mouth is pretty large, actually. I suppose just like that is probably enough, to be honest, which seems really, really odd. But that's how it is, so I'll be keeping it that way. I know some people do like it when I have animated mouths on my creations. It makes things just look, you know, it gives it a little bit more life. And I do want to start doing that more often again, but I'm not doing it for this creation purely because its entire mouth is a distinct block colour. And I can't have an animating mouth like that because Spore just simply does not allow it. Therefore, I am, you know, forced into having a static mouth. But like I said, I have heard the concerns and I will be trying to just be a little bit better in that regards in the future. When I can be, when the opportunity presents itself. And then I'm adding in these noses, or the nostrils, and the mouth does seem just a little bit off. It actually is a bit more like that. Bit of a creepy upward smile, but that is how the actual Pokemon is. And now the nostrils feel a little bit more proportional as a result of that. So there we go then, a little bit smaller. That's about right. Yeah, I'd say that's about right. Okay, good. And next up is the ears and the tail. So we've done the tail, but we need to cover that in a different colour entirely. So I'll make everything as small as they can be. They already are, damn. So I can't make it any smaller. As for the ears and the tail, they are the same colour, therefore I'll have to use the coat part here. Or do I want to actually? Do I want to? Because this colour here may actually be about right. Let's go ahead and render it for a second to see what colour that actually is. Yeah, that's about the right colour actually. It's just ever so slightly a shade lighter. But if we can utilise this part instead, I can do a little bit more for the base texture for the rest of the creature. So I'll be doing just that then. These kind of things will make sense as we go on. But if I do that and have the entire tail covered in that little brown sphere part here, then it will just make things a little bit more efficient. Right, so I want to try and have this be as small as possible, but it has to cover as much of the tail as it can. And that can be a little bit tricky, especially when it comes to animation. The animation on this may not be very, very good, but as a lot of you will know, I've long since just stopped caring for animation because they're such a pain in the butt. Like, Spore's animations are honestly some of the worst I've ever seen, but you can't really blame it though when it's all procedurally done. You know, you can't have the game predict animation for every single possible alternative, so I guess it kind of makes sense. But at the same time though, they're terrible. So, I've long hit the point now where I just have the animations be good enough. And that's that. Especially when the creatures are only in my own game. I don't have to worry about them polluting other people's games. Which is why I tend to settle for less. Right, that's about right. So now the tip is slightly larger. Let me see. Yeah, there we go, a little bit like that. I'm going to go ahead and just pull this one up slightly. That way it's a little bit more consistent. That way it flows better. Like that. And cool, I like that. And I'm going to have one more piece just here to try and make up for that little dent. There we go. So now it's a little bit more smooth where it goes from spine to tail. It's still not perfect, but given the restrictions that we're currently experiencing right now, I think it's about, you know, it's definitely a good enough kind of thing. Good enough. Then we have those giant pointy ears. I can't really see what shape the ears are entirely. They kind of look like little triangles. It's hard to tell, but they're very, very curved and round. So I think having the ears be something like this. Yeah, I think like that will be about acceptable, actually. I do quite like that. Like, you'll be able to see what the overall creature is. It's definitely close enough. Therefore, I'm quite happy them being like that. They do still have like a bit of a round point. It's not very defined to the point, but it's still noticeable. And I think that is enough to suggest, you know, what it is meant to be. And of course, you know, the little bit of a fold there. The little black outline as the original Pokemon creature has. Like so. Excellent. Little cute monkey thing, isn't it? Right then. Next up, we'll work on the little ears. Or, not the ears. The little leafy things on the top of the head. So, for this part, I could just use regular leaves. But the regular leaves will have a very weird shape. They won't really quite work in terms of creation. And they tend to have like a very weird texture as well. I'd rather use a flat, consistent texture. So one of these texture parts here. In fact, I actually think using spheres would be even better. this will present me with the best, you know, the best smoothest part possible, and I have a lot more control in terms of the shape. So something as simple as that would actually be a lot better. Now that I'm looking at it all, I'm kind of starting to feel like that little point here is a little bit redundant. If I can just ever so slightly bend it forward like that, so the rest of the creature still looks intact, good, I think that will about do it. It's very hard to get an idea of the exact shape of everything because, after all, the announcement for Sword and Shield has only just, you know, happened yesterday as I've been recording this. It was only just yesterday, and therefore we only have the one single 2D image. Actually, there was a bit of an animation, if I recall correctly. There was a little brief animation of the new starters, but they were very, very brief and very, very small, so I can't really get much information out of that as to how everything is shaped. I have to wait until the game's released, essentially, until the game's released or until there's more footage. But if I want to make this now, I have to do a bit of guessing work, and I think in terms of guesswork, I would honestly say this is about acceptable. At least I hope it is. I really hope that you guys agree. I think this is about acceptable thus far. If it turns out I do have things horribly wrong, I'm normally quite happy to redo them later on. Let me see. Get the little points in the little leafy bits there. Like so. Yep, like that. I think that's about good enough. Good, good. And then of course we have the little twig, I think. There's a little something in its all what do you call it? Is it hair? Is it leaves? I'm really not sure. But there's a little wooden thing inside there, so I'm trying to find the right part for that. In fact, once again, I'm meant to have an additional mod that I'm currently lacking out on, so I think I'll be using this piece instead. Normally I'd use a cylinder piece, because it is, after all, like a little cylinder that is there. But since, for whatever reason, I do not have the mod currently installed, I will have to fix that. I will instead use this piece here, which is about close enough. It does have the point instead of it being a pure cylinder, but it really is close enough. And like I said, you know, just a happy little reminder, I did reinstall my Spore and lose a bunch of my mods, so I will be fixing all of that as soon as I can. I won't notice what's missing until I need it, and that is happening quite a bit in this creation, which is quite unfortunate. You know, I don't want to be doing things with, you know, missing parts, but as you can see here though, things definitely are like a very positive close enough, and I'm happy about that. As long as it looks like the actual creature I'm trying to mimic, I am happy. Since that was the same colour as this, I will go ahead and try and see if I can end the tip at a bit of a sharp point. At least, you know, a bit flatter than it currently already is. If I do that and then pull the whole thing inwards, that should be a bit better, like that. Okay, that, as long as they're the same colour, that I am definitely happy with. It's not perfect, but it's damn well close. Oh then, cool. Actually, I do want to just move it down ever so slightly lower. And then have these bits here just be a little bit, there you go, a little bit flatter. A little bit more in line with the rest of the part, and then have that bit angled like that. There we go. Good, good stuff. I'm liking it. And last but not least, the eyes. The classic Pokemon eyes. Right then. Now, this is a hard part here because it's very, very easy to make these little flat eyes look unintentionally creepy. And so I'm really hoping that doesn't happen here. Let's go ahead and just as simple as that, have like a bit of a oval shape and embed it into the nail down, into the little, you know, Raccoon Mask part there. They will be popping out ever so slightly, and I can't really do much about that due to the shape. But I think it'll be okay. Actually, I think I need to be just, there you go, 1 digit smaller. 1 unit, even. The eyes are basically black and grey. Interesting, so for the black and grey eyes, I think I'll actually use a black here. Nice, strong black iris. I think I'll make them, yeah, make it look inwards like that. In the actual image, they kind of both are looking up in a direction. I would rather this be looking straight forward. Just because it's a Spore creature, I think it'll just look a little bit better, you know, just ever so slightly. So like that, I want to have it as close and flat as possible. And that is pretty damn spot on. I do want to have that little grey texture, like little grey outline around down here. Which a lot of Pokemon are exhibiting lately. Just a bit of a shine to the iris. In fact, what colour did I just use? What shade was that? That was 23. I think that may actually be a bit too light. I'll use 34 instead. It's only going to be slightly lighter, only slightly. I don't want to be this strange, like the strange, what's the word, obtuse grey thing. Something like that will be fine, good. And then finally, the white iris. Because the nail down is, you know, kind of popping out ever so slightly, I think I'll use a white nail down here for the actual pupil as well. That way, the parts that are popping out don't seem quite out of place. I don't really like it when it happens, but nail downs can only be, you know, thrown in, like, embedded into the part so far. And in terms of colour spheres, the only grey I have is a much, much lighter silver shade. Therefore, I'm kind of having to settle for the nail down part in this case. But I think that is about close enough. Right. Actually, now I say all that, if I want to be a bit more efficient, what I should do is just simply make this entire piece here smaller. And that will make it significantly flatter. What I can do then is also have it curve around. I think I settled a bit too quickly on that one, which is surprisingly easy to do. Not what I mean to do, but as you get a bit carried away with creation, you can quite easily get to a point where you think, ah, that bit's fine. But then, no, not quite. Gotta remind myself, actually, I could do better. And just like that, it is a lot better. So now I can use a colouring sphere, now that the nail downs are a lot flatter, and I have that just overlap all of it. It's got quite a small little pupil. I'd say about that large. Another little oval shape as well, so make it a little bit longer. Make it a bit smaller, like that, and ever so slightly pull it forward. That way it's got a higher priority, and good, it is over the eyes, or the shine. And that, I'd say, is about it. Now for the colours. Actually, quick little save. Always save frequently. I should have saved a lot more frequently in this, but again, it's very easy to get carried away. It looks so derpy. But I suppose the shinies kind of do, not the shinies, but I suppose the starters kind of do in a way, don't they? They do tend to look just a little bit derpy. Right, so this is going to be really hard for me to get the right colours. I'm going to do a bit of a cheeky trick. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open GIMP. I don't normally show this in video, but since it is a Pokemon, I like to try and get as close to, you know, as close to perfect as I possibly can. So that is the actual original creature there. I'm going to go ahead and pick the colour about there. I'm going to copy that HTML, and thanks to the advanced colour picker, I can actually just put that HTML right there. And that is the perfect shade. Which looks a little bit dark, but it is. It simply is. That is the right shade. The little mask there is not, but I can't really change it because it is a pre-made, you know, a predetermined colour. But I can at the very least change the rest of the body, and that is the right shade. Using that same trick, what I'm actually going to go ahead and do then is also pick out the little hands and feet there, so that little colour brown. They may not be absolutely perfect in-game, sometimes the colours do kind of go a little bit lighter or a little bit darker, but this is a great way to get absolutely close enough. And then for the final colour, we'll get a bit of a, want a shadow or do I want a light? I'll go for a light. A bit of a lighter shade of green there, and we'll have that be this little shiny coat here. So now we'll have a bit of a lighter definition, have the nice, perfectly orangey brown arms and legs, and there we have it. That is our cute little Grookey there. It does seem a little bit off in some places. Unfortunately, that just is kind of the case of Spore. It's hard to get things to be absolutely perfect. But I like it though. I do like how it came out. Although, in the end, I did seem to use a far too dark a grey colour, so you can't even see the iris. Or like the shiny part, which is annoying. And the white of the eye and the green are actually a little bit too smooth. So what I will do is actually go ahead and solve both of those issues. I'm going for grade 23 like I was originally planning on. Let's just hide that in there. So one there, one up to the side like that. If it will let me, if I can just kind of squeeze it in. Like that, perfect. And then one more off to the side, like that. Perfect, good. And then like I said, the white of the iris is just ever so slightly too similar shade as to the mask of the creature, so I'm actually going to go ahead and give it a black outline. Which hopefully I can make it as small as possible, as this can be a bit of a difficult process, especially this late on. It's the kind of thing I would have preferred to have done much earlier on, but I did not think it would be required. So let's just make it a little bit wider, there we go, a little bit taller and try and embed it in. So that would work, but it's just a little bit thicker than I'd like. A little bit too pronounced, a little bit too defined. So if I can just make it, there you go, a little bit deeper in, ever so slightly, ever so subtle. But I have a bit of an issue. It's really, really hard just to make it absolutely perfect. Or actually, I think that is a bit blotchy. But I do think this is about as close as we are going to get. If I can make it move a little bit higher, maybe. Oh, there we go. It's going to be blotchy, but it's going to be as close as I can get. That is enough. Right there, that made a huge difference. In fact, if I give it like a unintentional, you know, an unintentional bit of eyeliner, which is honestly fine. So there we go then. There is our little Grookey. There definitely is something that feels off about it. I actually think it may just be that the body is a bit too big in proportion to the rest of the creature. And the ears are just slightly too forward. I'll do that. That might make it a little bit different. Yeah, I think it's like the overall onion shape of the head. So I've gone with a perfect sphere. I don't really have the elongated head feel to it. So I think that's probably what's making it feel just a little bit off. But again, as far as Spore goes, I'm actually very, very happy with this. And the colours of the little stick parts in the hair leaf things, they came out quite consistent in the end, so I'm happy about that. Can't really see the shading that I wanted with the rest of the body. Let's make that a little bit lighter. And in fact, oh, you can see around the chin. Okay then, so you can see it in some places, just not everywhere. What if I use this colour instead? This texture. Yeah, there you go. It's very, very subtle, but you can just about see a bit of a lighter pattern in some areas. And yeah. Or actually, now that I say that, what if I make it darker instead? If I copy this part here, that code, put it there, and just make it ever so slightly darker, would that make a bit of a better contrast? It's very, very subtle, but it is there. I can see it at least. It's extraordinarily subtle, but that's all I want. It's a nice little subtle change of gradient. That way the flat colour isn't, you know, tremendously flat. But yes then friends, there we have it. The first of the 3 new starters from Pokemon Sword and Shield. Let me know which one you'd like to see next, either Scorbunny or Sobble. And let me know what you think about this. And as always guys, I really hope that you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you all next time. Cheers.